So hello everyone to the September Los Altos Chamber Government Affairs Committee. First thing to note that my birthday's in 5 days. My birthday's in 5 days, everyone. So that's the number one news of today. You heard it here first. Hey, Ginny.
And mine's on Friday.
You gotta love Virgo babies. All right.
Yes, it's a good month.
We want to thank our wonderful speaker, Jon. We'll be introducing him in a second, but we're just going to go ahead and do the quick style round robin introductions, and hopefully we'll get through it really quickly. So be prepared to take yourself off of mute, you all. I'm Diana Batista. I am with the Stanford Children's Hospital, and I co-chair this meeting with my co-chair, Kathy.
Good morning, everybody. Kathy Lara, Chamber Board, co-chair with Diana of the Government Affairs, and also a very concerned resident. So hoping that Jon can answer some of the many questions that at least I have about what all this is.
And seeing the crowd of people coming in, I think this is going to take us a full hour. So really going quickly to Ginny.
Ginny Lear, Los Altos Women's Caucus.
Donna.
Hello, Donna Verna, private professional fiduciary and president of Los Altos Rotary.
Scott. O'Brien.
In commercial real estate, former chamber board member.
Julie, the awesome Julie.
Julie Rose, proud lifetime member of the chamber.
Joe.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Joe Maletti, Avid Bank, former board member of the chamber, and as mentioned earlier, concerned resident of Los Altos.
Okay, because there are so many people, I'm going to read, this is going on the fly. If you all wouldn't mind putting your name and an organization, if you like, in the chat box, because there are like 20 folks on the call, and I want to make sure that we get to Jon, who's going to answer all your questions about redistricting. He's been with the city for like 14 years, I believe, 15 years, just climbing through the ranks, and now he is our assistant city manager, and we're so glad to have you here. I apologize for the change of let's just jump into this, but I think this is way more interesting than who's here. So not that we don't love you all, but I think we all want to hear from Jon. So without further ado, let's just get this started.
Great. Well, thank you. I don't know that I would ever say that I'm more interesting than all of you, but I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me this morning, letting me present some information and take your questions. I will do my best to answer them. I'm sure you will come up with some that I will say, you know what, that's a great question. I'll get back to you. But I do have a presentation that, can I share my screen? Whoever the host is.
Yes. Great.
And I know many of you, have been attending city council meetings for years, and if you've ever seen me present, you'll probably be shocked by how long this presentation is, because it's longer than any presentation I normally give. But with that, we'll jump right in. I know we've got just a short amount of time, so I'll go through these pretty quickly. If you have questions and want to go back to something, let me know. And we can certainly go back. So we are talking, I'm here today to talk about our transition to district-based elections. I, like many of you, have recently become semi-knowledgeable about the process and what it is to move to district elections. But I want to give some basic information. If you've heard this before, great. If you haven't, even better. So what is it? So currently the city holds at-large elections. This means that all 5 city council members are elected by the entire voting population of the city of Los Altos. Each voter in the city gets to vote for all 5 council members. As you know, we have an election coming up in which 3 of the seats will be up. Everybody gets to vote for all 3 council members, or gets to vote for 3 council members. And then in 2 years, or 2 years ago, you voted for 2 council members. District-based elections, the city will be divided into 5 districts, and each council member will be elected by a single voting district. And so you, as the Los Altos voter, will vote for 1 council member every 4 years, rather than voting for all 5 council members every 2 years. Now, you might be like many people are thinking, well, that's a really silly idea, John. Why on earth would we want to do something like that? And the answer is, well, we don't really want to do it. But the California Voting Rights Act, which was enacted about 25 years ago, has at its core some hopes to avoid some tricky situations when it comes to elections and voting. The key point of it, I will say, is trying to ensure that all voters have an opportunity and an equal chance to have their voices heard and have a chance to elect their chosen candidates. And so we like to say that there's a 3-point test for the CVRA. First point is a jurisdiction holding at-large elections, which the City of Los Altos does. Is there an occurrence of racially polarized voting? This is where a minority group or minority demographic has a history of not being represented or not being able to elect council members from their demographic. And then is there a history of vote dilution, which is where a demographic, their votes kind of get dispersed out, and so they aren't as impactful as they might have been if they were not diluted. And the 2 definitions of that get of racially polarized voting and vote dilution get a little tricky. But basically the CVRA says, well, if an agency has at-large elections, which we do, then that subjects or it opens it up to a potential lawsuit. And so the city received a notice back in April from a gentleman whose name I won't mention, and we'll just refer to him as you-know-who, that said, the city is in violation of the CVRA. And if we didn't move to district elections, we were going to be open to a lawsuit. And so the city council talked about it. One of the pieces of information they took into consideration is the fact that every agency that has fought these sorts of letters, I'll back up and say, who has sort of gone through the state. Hundreds of other cities, school boards, special districts, etc., have received their notice of violation. Some of them have decided, you know what, we're going to fight this thing. And those agencies have paid hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And every single one of them has lost. And so the city council looked at this and said, we could fight this. We could spend millions and millions of dollars and have a court say you have to move to district-based elections, or we could not fight it and we can move to district-based elections. And so the council did give direction that we're going to move towards this type of election. And we have to do this by October 31st of this year. So I want to talk a little bit about the process to do so. State law says that a city or an agency has to complete at least 5 public meetings prior to transitioning and moving to district elections. The first 2 meetings have to be held before any sorts of maps have been drawn. And so we did those 2 meetings in June and July. Following that, the city's demographer drafted some maps, and I'll talk a little bit about the process of how they did that and how that went. Last Wednesday, so a week ago today, we held our third public meeting in which the draft maps were presented. It really was an opportunity to discuss with the council and the community the process for finalizing the map. We got a lot of great input from the community members who came and who spoke. They asked some great questions, provided us some thoughts that we hadn't really been thinking of, and got great direction from the council on additional information that they wanted to see to help finalize the maps. And so right now we're in the community outreach phase. I put that as red because I don't like red and we don't like what we're doing, but we're doing it anyways. And so it's red. Once we finish the community outreach, the community outreach will lead up to the September 24th meeting, at which time we'll present to the council, hey, here's everything that we heard, and here is the information that you asked for, which again, I'll go into a little bit here in just a second. Hopefully at that meeting, the council say, okay, this is the map we want to go with. They might say, we should move this line over here. We should move it this way, make these tweaks. And then at the October 8th city council meeting, they will adopt the final map, and we'll move forward. And it's important to note that this will not impact the upcoming election this November. This will go into effect for the 2026 city council election. So it's not going to impact what's going on in November. So I want to talk a little bit about the maps. The demographer drafted 3 maps. I have been telling everyone I can, don't get tied to any one of these maps. These maps, the purpose of these maps is to just give us all something to talk about. It's one thing to look at a map of the city and say, well, how could we divide up the city? It's another to have something where we can actually visualize and we can look at and see what the districts might look like, how they might be aligned, where we might draw some lines, etc. And to be able to talk about, well, what really makes up the district and how should we form each district. And so these maps, look great, but I can almost guarantee that the final map will not look like one of these 3 maps. I will note a couple of things about them. The colors mean nothing other than to distinguish a district from a district. The numbering system means nothing. There is a reason why they are numbered the way they are, but it is simply because when the demographer was creating the maps, they started with District 1 and they drew that one first, and then they moved to District 2 and drew that one, and so on and so forth. And so for each map, that just shows you where they started and then where they went from there. When the final map is decided upon, the districts will be numbered, and that will have relevance for when each district is up for election. I want to talk a little bit about how they came up with these maps, because it'll be an important thing for you all and the community to keep in mind for the next few weeks as we move along the process. And so I'm going to try to switch my sharing to a different window. So I mentioned earlier about how after the first 2 meetings, the demographer went and started drawing the maps. The at the same time, the community was invited and able to participate in an exercise to help draw the maps, and so the community members could understand how the process would go. And so on the city's website, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, if you scroll down, there's a link to district-based elections. This is our page for all of our information related to district-based elections. There's a lot of great info and ways to stay connected and follow the process. But if we scroll down, there's a mapping exercise that you can click on. This will take you to a landing page because we were having trouble embedding it straight into the previous page. But if you click on the link, it'll take you here. So this is an online interactive tool in which you and any member of the community can work on drawing maps. And so there's a couple of things to look at. You can see all of the maps that have been drawn thus far. If you scroll down, these are community members have drawn these maps. But you can do it yourself. And that's by clicking this link here, the purple-ish, at least on my screen, that says Los Altos 5 council districts. So members of the public have been submitting maps based on this tool. I won't go into how to use the tool. If you're interested in learning how, I would suggest watching the city council meeting from last week. The demographer went through and instructed on how to use the tool and the various features of that. The demographer back to the process. The demographer went and looked at the maps. There's a few that they looked at and said, we'll call those protest maps. Those are we don't want to go to districts. We think this is silly. And you can see those maps kind of here. You can see the map here where folks were expressing their opinion that districting is a bad idea for the city. The demographer then took some of the maps that were drawn. For example, this one, which says identified as mostly cut on major streets, and then made some tweaks, some adjustments. If you look at that map versus this map here, map A, you'll see they kind of look similar-ish. And that's because the demographer, like I say, took this map over here and made some tweaks and adjustments to make it what I'll call slightly more legal. Not that there's necessarily anything illegal about this map, but made it fit the criteria of the CVRA. Some of the things that the demographer looks at when they are drawing maps are these criteria up here. This is a little higher up. There are 5 criteria that they look at, and these criteria are listed in order of importance. So the first is they have to be roughly equal to in size. There's a whole formula and statistical analysis with deviations and whatnot. I won't get into that, but they have to be about the same size. The districts have to be contiguous, so they have to be in one piece. So for example, I showed this map earlier where, you have some of the purple or pink here, and then up here and up here. These districts are not contiguous. They're not touching, their parts of the district aren't touching each other. The third is maintain communities of interest. And this is a very broad term that could mean a number of different things. But the idea is if there's a community that has a similar values, similar priorities, we want to try to keep those together. You know, if there's for example, a historic neighborhood where you know, the homes have all been deemed historic and designated as such, we can't draw a line down the middle of it. Another might be, you know, we have a neighborhood where I think, what is it? Pickleball is the reference. Pickleball is super important to this neighborhood and area, and so we should try to keep that neighborhood together. This is a lot of the information that we are looking for from all of you, from the community. We got some good feedback on what communities of interest might be at the council meeting last week. You know, whether it's looking at where the kids go to school, if it's where folks go to shop, where they go to the park, communities like that. And so that's a lot of the input we're trying to get from the community, the city and the residents in the next coming weeks. That's sort of the information, that's some of the information that the city council is looking for, particularly when we go back to them on September 24th. So they have an idea of, okay, this general area of the city, you know, sort of melds with the same interest as this area over here. And so we should try to keep those two together. Now, I will say there may be a community of interest that we're not able to keep together, and I'll show you why here in a moment, just for whatever reason. And that is, you know, for example, let me switch back to the other maps. As you know, most of the city is part of the Los Altos School District. We have this section down here that's south of Fremont, is part of the Cupertino Union School District. It would stand to reason that this would be a community of interest. The folks whose kids attend Cupertino schools would have similar priorities and interests, etc. Problem is that if we were to make a district of everything south of Fremont, that district would be too large. And it gets back to the criteria that I showed earlier of the districts have to be relatively equal in size, and equal in size is of higher importance than keeping a community of interest together. So like I say, there will be communities of interest that we just, for whatever reason, we can't necessarily keep them together, but we're certainly going to try and do our best. The next criteria is easily identifiable and understandable lines. These are major roadways. It could be, you know, if we had a river running through the city, which I know we have a few creeks, but not, you know, a major river. If we had railroad tracks running through the town, easily identifiable and understandable boundaries. When you look at some of these maps, you can see, okay, San Antonio Road, I see El Monte Road, I see Foothill, I see Fremont. You know, you can see sort of the larger roadways are making up these boundaries. And then the last one is they have to be compact. And that just means, you know, we can't create 5 districts that are just super long and skinny. And yeah, they're contiguous, but, you know, maybe, you know, we have one that stretches from here down to here. With the mindset is, you know, folks in different parts of town are going to have different priorities and different interests. And so we have to try to make them more roundish and square and compact as can be. So that's how like I say, that's how the demographer came up with the maps. They looked at what the public had submitted, made some tweaks based on the criteria, put forth 3 maps that again are just a starting point, not the end point. So this from now we'll go and look at and talk with all of you about, okay, where do you live on the map? Okay, you live, for example, you live here. Okay, where do you shop? Where do you go to school? Where do you, on your free time, where do you walk the dog? Where do you, lots of questions like that to help us understand, okay, this is your community of interest, and we can start building those communities. I'll say we had a couple of times where of opportunities for members of the public to provide input, and there's a lot of things that we haven't been thinking of. I like to use the example at the last council meeting where a member of the public said, I live down here in the Highlands, right? But I do my shopping in Loyola Corners and Rancho. I don't go to Foothill Crossing. I don't go to Woodland Plaza. I go to Loyola Corners and to Rancho. That's important information for us to know and to understand, because it helps us to build, okay, this is where folks are going. This is where they're congregating. This is where they are building their communities at home. I know I'm going long-winded, so I'm going to move on really quick. If you've got other questions about this, let me know, and we can come back to it. But what happens next? As I said, we're in the middle of our community outreach efforts. We're doing something. If you're interested in attending any sort of community engagement event, you've got plenty of opportunities. We're doing at least one thing pretty much every day in September. Some days there's 2 or 3 community outreach events. We'll be at the farmers market tomorrow. We'll be at the farmers market for the next 3 weeks. Friday, I'm talking to the Community Coalition. We have a couple of community workshops that are scheduled for not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. We're going to go to the Rotary. There's a lot of opportunities to come and to hear what is going on and where we're at in the process. As I say, all of this is building towards the September 24th meeting at City Council meeting, at which we'll hopefully get some direction from the council on which map we want to move forward. And then at the October 8th meeting will be for the approval of the final map. And so ways to provide further input, like I say, we want to hear from everybody or as many people as we can, just so we can have a better understanding of the community and where the district line should be drawn. Of course, we set up a special email account, districts@losaltosca.gov, in which you can submit comments and thoughts and questions. We have a page on our city website, which is that link there. I showed you that earlier. It has upcoming events. It has the presentations and the videos from the last meetings, and ways to provide input there. And of course, we have all of the community engagement events between now and September 24th. With that, I will stop talking and see if there are any questions.
Jon, I want to thank you first of all for this great presentation. It's really informative and I think really helpful. And I'm going to open the floor for questions, but I do have one really quickly. What happens? There's an election this year, new people are going to come on, there's redistricting going on. What if that person doesn't live in the district, like District 4? Do they have to run again or move? I mean, what happens?
Yeah. I'm just writing some notes for myself. So if a council member, so that is a great question. So once the districts have gone into effect, an individual has to be a registered voter in their district in order to run for council in that district. It will not affect the council members who are elected at large. Every council member who is on the council will be able to finish their term. Now, if they're eligible to run for re-election, then when their term ends, they would have to run in their district. So if a council member is elected at large, you know, if I were the council member and I was elected at large, I could finish out my term. If when my term ends, my district is not up for election, I would not be able to run. I'd have to wait until my district is up for election. So for the first couple of elections, there might be some overlap between those who are elected at large and those who are elected in a district. But you know, in a couple of elections, that'll go away. That won't be an issue.
Okay, great. Okay, I see Gary and then Abby. Gary?
Oh, hi, John. Sorry. The whole point of this is to avoid vote dilution, which disenfranchises certain groups. Is it even possible to have vote concentration of some sort that could create a concentrated district in Los Altos? Did the demographer consider that?
That is a great question. And I'll answer it in two ways. One is, I don't know if we'll know until we get to the final map, whether or not we're able to create a majority minority district or not. The second part of the answer is, I'll try to say this, and keep in mind, I am not a lawyer. Nothing I should say should be taken as legal advice or legal interpretation or anything like that. My read is the CVRA doesn't care if you can or can't create, solve the issue of vote dilution or racially polarized voting. It says, if you have at-large elections, you probably do have it, so you need to move to district elections. One of the things that we actually are not able to look at when we draw district maps is the racial identity of the voters in the district, which
that's crazy.
is kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
The point of the CVRA is, well, let's make sure that a minority group has an ability to have their voice be heard, but don't draw the map so that it's based around where the minority group lives. So it's kind of, a lot of this is very head scratching and just kind of, like I say, counterintuitive. But we have some fantastic attorneys who are much more knowledgeable in all of this, and they are helping keep us on track and guide us in how to do this in accordance with state law and the statutes of the CVRA.
Thank you.
That was an excellent response. I think you work in city government, John. We're gonna go to Abby next, and then Donna, and then Joe.
Hi, John. What if there is no candidate for a district? It's not easy to get good people to run.
It's a great question. Sometimes it's not easy to get anybody to run. So if there's not a candidate for a district, so the city does not have any separate ordinance related to vacancies on city council, or if there's not enough people to run. And so we follow state law, which treats that seat as a vacancy on the council. So currently, if one of the 5 council members were to say, you know what, I have to step down, it would create a vacancy on the council. The state law outlines procedures for how to fill that vacancy. And so the council can follow those and find somebody and put somebody in place through an appointment process. If there is not a candidate in a district, the council would do the same process. They declare the seat as a vacant, and then they could go through, according to state law, which I won't get into what that process looks like, but the council would go through the process and appoint somebody.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Donna.
Thank you for asking my question, Abby. That was number one. John, I applaud the work you guys are doing. I'd like to know really what could you guys accomplish if you didn't need to do this. I've lived in Los Altos for nearly 30 years. I've seen our demographic shift pretty considerably in the last 10, 20 years. What happens to these beautifully drawn district maps when the demographics shift again, which we all know they will?
Yeah, this is a great question. So one thing I neglected to mention during my presentation. So the maps, one of the things that I had mentioned was the districts have to be relatively equal in size. And the way they determine that is based on number of people living in the district, not voters, number of people living in the district. So we use the latest census data to determine how many people are living in a district. And so every time a new census comes out, an agency, the city, goes through a process to evaluate the districts and to redraw the lines if needed, if the demographics or the population has shifted. And so in 2031, we will go through the process again. Hopefully it'll be less painful or less work, maybe, because we'll already have sort of the lines drawn, and we might look at it and say, okay, well, we need to move this boundary over this way, or we move this boundary this way, and make some tweaks. But we will adjust every 10 years once the new census comes out, so that we have the districts that are relatively equal in size.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
We should all encourage our children to become demographers. There's full employment available.
Joe.
Yeah, these are great questions, and I know this isn't something that you were really dying to do, so I appreciate all the work on this to date, and it's a daunting task. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm assuming that they don't. It may not be applicable for where we live, but they don't account for party, demographics in that calculation. It's a sheer numbers thing, right?
Right. So, yeah. So, once you get below the state level, all elections are nonpartisan. So you're not you're not running as a Democrat, you're not running as a Republican or Libertarian, whatever. You're just running as a person. And so that Los Altos is that way. And so there is, that won't be taken into consideration of, oh, we have a pocket of Green Party who live over here. And so, we need to, it's not something that'll be influential in how we draw the lines.
Great. Bill.
Sorry, Bill, before you jump in, I should say though, that's not to say that you don't have a neighborhood that identifies as a general party who have a shared interest or similar values that say, this is our community of interest. We align around, making sure that the city is, net zero and has 100% green and those types of issues, or, something else that might relate to a political party. It just wouldn't be, hey, we're all independents in our neighborhood, so we all need to be together, right? it's more around, okay, what is our shared interest in and priorities and values?
So I think that more than just about any other issue I'm aware of in the last 20 years, the city is united against this plan. And if you look at the proposed districts, the percentage of any particular demographic group that supposedly is the reason that our hated attorney in Malibu is forcing this, the numbers aren't any different than they are citywide. There's been discussion that ranked choice voting does a much better job of addressing these issues and has other benefits and wouldn't require us to greatly dilute the supply of potentially quality council members. As I understand it, you have to be a charter city in order to do ranked choice voting, but there have been some proposals that perhaps Los Altos could do a quick charter city change by only adopting, by declaring ourselves a charter city that all general law applies to except for election issues. Is there anything going on with that? Any chance that that could still happen instead of moving to, a plan that no one's happy with?
Well, so Bill, I'm going to say you're going to love this answer, and by love it, you're going to hate it. That is not direction that has been given from the city council. And so if there are folks who are interested in learning more about ranked choice voting or charter cities, or the process or where things are at, I unfortunately am not the person to ask about those things.
Thank you.
I will say, the city of Los Altos is a general law city, which, means we're bound by a lot of what the state laws say. And we have some of the charter cities are able to do some other things that we cannot.
Jenny, did you want to ask a question?
I did. Somehow it timed out. Yes, John, to clarify what I think is true, if the 5 council members who are on now, the first round of 2 of them who are running by district 2 years from now, if a current remaining 3 council members, one of them lives in one of those districts, you have said they can finish their term, but then the council member who has been elected by district is the council member. The other person who may have 4 years left on a term cannot run from that district.
Yes. So
Not 4 years left on a term, but the ability to run again.
right. So they could run again. They would just have to run in the district that they live in, right? So
right, but if they live in a district where a district person was elected, they can't run from there.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll use the scenario. So I run for council. I'm running for council this November. I get elected.
Yes.
It's my first time being elected. I'm elected at large. I will be able to serve my term until November of 2028.
Okay.
I live in a district. I live in the same district as Jenny. Jenny in our district is up for election in 2026. Jenny runs for election in 2026 and is elected. When my term comes up in November of 2028, I would not be able to run for election.
Okay.
Until November of 2030. In which case, then I could choose to challenge Jenny, even though knowing I would lose. I might still do that, but I would not be able to until my district comes up for election.
If you moved, you could.
So if I moved to a different district, I could.
Okay, thanks.
And that actually brings up another point. If a council member is, elected to represent a district and then midterm moves to another district, they would no longer be able to serve on the council. They would,
Interim.
it's similar to if I am on the council right now and I were to move to another city, I couldn't stay on the council.
You know, I was never good at word problems in school. This was like, what? But it makes total sense. I have a really random question. So I've been privy to a few conversations in other cities about the redistricting and just kind of like district elections. And there's always, it seems like, a conversation for a mayor at large, like directly electing a mayor so that there's not one district that is the mayor. And so was that ever part of a conversation? Did the city council look at that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what Diana is referring to is we had, instead of having 5 districts, what if we did 4 districts and then had the mayor who was elected at large? That is an option that the council considered. They had a lot of back and forth and discussion about the pros, the cons, for both 5 districts or 4 districts and a at-large mayor. I'll say we had at the second public meeting, we had a number of commenters, public members of the public who spoke in favor of both. And in the end, the council weighed all the options and gave us direction to move forward with 5 districts. So that's what we're currently looking at is 5 districts. But you're right, that is an option, but it is something that the council did talk about and consider.
Okay, thank you. Marie.
Thank you, Diana, and John also. How will it be determined which district or districts are up for election in 2026 or any particular year?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer, which is frustrating, is who knows. Basically, the council will get to decide which districts are up for election in 2026. If the state law is mostly silent around it, if we were to have a district that basically, if we were able to create a district with a minority majority, then, and that group has a history of having their votes diluted or not being able to elect their representatives, we would have to put that district, that district would go first in the election order. If we're not able to, then it'll be up to the council to just determine how they do that. There's some things that we're not able to consider, one of which is the incumbents and where they live. So we couldn't say, oh, council member so-and-so, your term ends in November 2026, so let's pick your district so you can run again. We can't consider that. So it could end up being the council talks and says, you know what, we're going to draw 2 numbers out of a hat. Or, we like the idea of, we've got 5 districts, so 1, 3, and 5 are one election cycle, and 2 and 4 are another election cycle. They could say, we want 1 and 2 to go first, and 3 and 4 and 5 to be in the next one. There's no set parameters around how to choose, other than, like I say, if there is a district or districts in which we're able to sort of create this minority majority demographic.
And when you say council, is that the current council or the one that's in place in 2026?
The current council. So hopefully at the September 24th council meeting, the council will say, okay, this is the map we're going to go with, and we're going to have districts A and B go be up for election in November 2026. I should say that's something else that the state law is largely silent on. There's no set criteria for how to name the districts. So if you've got some interesting or creative names that you want to name the districts, I mean, most cities go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because it's easiest.
All right, thank you. Are there any last questions or comments? In honor of Ginny's birthday, we should name it Ginny's District. I'm just kidding.
Diana?
Abby, did you have a question?
I do. This is a well-meaning law. So were all the lawsuits about the disabled that were taken by a dishonest attorney and turned into an opportunity to become a mega millionaire. Has there been any consideration, since this is a state, that all of these communities that are not for this lobby their state assemblymen and senators and maybe making some changes such as cities under a population of 20,000 exempt? I mean, has there been any discussion between the cities legally, et cetera, of anything we can do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know, so the city is part of the California League of, or what is it? It's Cal Cities, the League of California Cities, who will often represent the cities in the state, in Sacramento. There certainly is the suggestion that, you know, and it's been said at city council meetings even, of, you know, we need to if people want to talk to Senator Becker or Berman, to talk with them about their concerns and the issues, then that is certainly something that can be done. There, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a large movement by the cities themselves to lobby the state. But it certainly is something that you all, as individuals, can do, and can reach out to the legislature and talk with them and express your concerns, and your thoughts, and provide suggestions.
Great. Jon, thank you so much for being here with us and bringing us a very large audience on a September morning. We should have you every month. Is there any final thing? Remind us again when the next community meeting is.
Sure. Well, I don't know that it's me. I think it's the topic that probably drew people. And you probably will get sick and tired of hearing about districts if I keep coming and talking about districts. Certainly, the next meeting, the next city council meeting is September 24th at 7 p.m. Again, that's where we'll present to the city council. Here's everything we heard. Here's all the information that you were looking for. Let's finalize the map. Tell us which one you want us to move forward with. How do you want to order the elections, etc. So that's September 24th at 7 p.m. And I thank all of you for letting me take an hour out of your morning. If you have other questions, if you have thoughts, comments, feel free to reach out. I think you can reach out to the districts at losaltosca.gov email address, or you can email me personally. I think just about everybody has my email, and I knows who I am and how to get a hold of me.
Great. Thank you again. Virtual applause. Thank you. There you go. And so really quick announcements to everyone while I still have you. The Chamber is co-sponsoring the City Council Candidates Forum on September 25th from 7 to 8:30 at the Los Altos Community Center Oak Room. Doors open at 6:45. So elect the ones that you want at large for a few more years. And then we've got the ribbon cutting and open house October 4th at Elderberry Capital at 280 2nd Street, 4 to 7. And October 17th, we have a networking event at the agency at 160 Main Street It's in the chat box in case you didn't catch everything I said. Jon, once again, thank you so much for being with us. You're welcome anytime. This is, you know, your chamber as well. And closing on a happy birthday to all the Virgos out there. So see you all next month, and thank you again.